Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. And in this video I'm going to show you what is perhaps the grossest warhammer project I've ever done. This is a flesh banner to go on the knight lance that I've been working on recently. Last week I did a possessed demonic shield, and this week it's about doing something different with the banner that the knight displays between its legs. So first off, I'm taking the heads on sticks that I used to make the demonic shield last week, slicing the sticks off the bottom across all the models, then digging out the trusty blue stuff. Now if you've never done blue stuff moulding before, I do have a full video that explains everything, which I will link down below. Because, you know, to go through that would extend the length of this video. But all I did was took the banner that goes between the legs of the knight, dropped it into the blue stuff, peeled it out before the blue stuff had a chance to set and cool down, and then took the heads that we chopped the spikes off and pushed them into the blue stuff. Now what I wanted to do was make this banner look like it was, you know, the victims of the knight that had been killed. They'd peeled the skin off the faces and sort of stitched them together, or in a demonic way possessed it to make this kind of fleshy banner. So pushing those heads in random places across the blue stuff. Now when it had thoroughly dried and cooled down, peeled the heads out, kind of took a look and thought, I've left the gaps a bit too much. It feels like there was too much space in between some of these heads. So no problem, I still had some blue stuff left in the thermos, started again. What I also did was just explored for a few extra heads. Now when I'd done the demonic banner, or demonic shield rather, I'd taken heads from all the different bits boxes and gone for more fleshy heads. I also then looked around for some extra ones and used the limited edition heads that came from the Space Marine Heroes with the Nurgle models in. So really any faces you want to use on this is great. If you happen to have the Eldar collection or you've got some orcs or whatever, any kind of faces would work for this banner. So again, this time around, pushing those heads in and then making them a little bit closer to each other when I pushed them in. Now I've not melted down the first mould because again I've not done the next stage yet, so for all I know the first mould would be absolutely perfect, but it didn't feel like it was going to, so I thought while I was at it you may as well do, you know, another step there. So again, pushing all the heads in before it dries. And what I also tried to do was not go too far in, because I want these faces just to look like, you know, skin's been peeled rather than they're demonic and pushing their way out of it. Now mixing up some green stuff. This has been left for about 10 minutes. Normally I'd leave it for longer if you're going to do sculpting, but all we're doing here is filling in the space on this blue stuff, and the blue stuff's been let to dry now and thoroughly set, so there's no heat left in it. Taking the green stuff, making it to about maybe a millimetre or so thick, dropping it into the mould and then really pushing it into all the gaps and cracks into the faces. So I'm using just the end of a paintbrush, dipped into a bit of Vaseline so that it's not going to stick to this green stuff, because you really need to kind of force the green stuff into the indentations where the faces were. What that will also mean is that the back of the banner, as you can see here, will have all sorts of nice indentations and crevices and things like that, and look a bit like skin. If you put too much green stuff into the mould, the back of the banner is going to be completely flat and it won't look like this has been made up out of the skin pieces. Or at least that's the theory I had while I was doing it. So they've been left to dry, and then just peeling this green stuff out carefully. And this is the second one we did, pulling this out first. Really gentle when I'm doing it because it's not super thick, and if I'm honest, I've not let this green stuff dry kind of overnight like I normally do. This only had maybe 3 or 4 hours, so not quite as long as I'd normally let them to dry, but I figured that would make it easier to work with for what I intended on the next step. And to be honest, I'm really pleased with how this one came out. There are a couple of gaps in between faces, and I did consider doing another mould, but I thought, right, I'm going to carry on with the project and see how it comes out. And in the end, I never bothered doing another moulding. The first mould, like I thought, actually, I took a bit less care pulling this out. Far too many gaps between the faces and wouldn't work for the what I'm going for. Now it's time to begin the trim down process. Now, when you saw when I put the green stuff into the mould, it lapped up the side of the mould quite a lot. So first of all, just a pair of clippers to remove that and get it back down to the actual size of the banner originally. Now I'm not being too precious about how neat I am, because we don't want this to be super neat, which you'll see here, because the next step is going around just with the end of a hobby knife and scuffing up and pulling little pieces and teasing out that green stuff all around the edge to make it look like a ragged sort of flayed skin. So there's no need really to be precise with the previous stages. Now be very careful not to kind of rip the green stuff, because if you put too much pressure on, you could do, but just slicing little places out using the very end just to roughen the texture of the green stuff. Now in the patches where we've got space in between the heads, in that instance I'm using the very end and I am literally trying to sort of carve out little holes into the green stuff, again going very gentle, very careful, because then this will look like the areas where the skin hasn't been merged together as these you know, people have been, whatever process they've gone through. looking at the back after that post, you can see there, nicely roughed and scuffed up and doesn't look even. And then the front, couple of holes, couple of scratches, scuffed around the edge. That's time for painting. Fairly quick process. I'm doing contrast paints through all this, and the descriptions of what they are at the top. Now I did use a plague bearer face on this, so I'm putting plague bearer flesh. Now it's a bit weird, obviously, because it's the demon in a skin thing, and you think maybe a demon would just disappear in a puff of smoke and you couldn't skin it. But hey ho, it's 40k, anything's explainable. So with the plague bearer flesh, then on the rest of the skin, I'm doing Gulliman flesh all over. That's important to note when I'm doing this. I'm not letting the individual layers dry in between each, and I did this whole kind of painting banner session in about 10 minutes at the end. It's been sprayed black and then sprayed with Wraithbone, and that's a great start for the contrast paint to really work on. That's what enables you to do this in about the 10 minutes that I did. So I'm putting the skeleton horde onto the horn and onto the teeth of some of the models as we're going through. Now I'm not doing it really any consistency, so some faces I didn't put paint on the teeth, some I did, and it might seem a bit strange with this next thing that I'm doing gore grunter fur on all the hair colours, so they've all got the same colour hair. But to be honest, with the effect we're doing, it kind of blends across and would just add a lot of time if you were doing different, hair colours and things like that, and really wouldn't add a great deal to the effect. Now I'm using snakebite leather in between all the heads and faces, because that's going to make the skin look a bit leathery coloured. Obviously it's in the name, but it just gives a few different tones and bits of interest, so it's not just the same flesh colour across the board. Bad Moon Yellow into the mouth of the flesh bearer and the eye, and I did drop it into a few of the rest of the eyes on the model, because although the human wouldn't have bright yellow eyes, I suppose that's a indication of the process these guys have gone through, whether it was being skinned and stitched together or whether this is some sort of demonic process. Now Volupus Pink is beginning the effect of the blood banner thing we're going for. I'm putting this onto all like the neck areas to begin the idea of this is where the blood and things is coming from. Moving on to Blood for the Blood God, and again the contrast paint is still wet when we're doing this, and I'm putting this in a bit more volume than the Volupus Pink, kind of on the areas where I imagine all the blood has come from, but trying not to obscure too much of the faces. So while I might be putting some blood on the faces, it's not completely covering the detail. And I saw here I do probably 2 or 3 passes across the model, putting small amounts on and just building it up gradually until I think I'm happy with the effect. So this is what it looked like at this kind of stage. Absolutely disgusting, as I think you can realise, and I was really happy with it at this point. Obviously you never know what it's going to do when it dries, but even when it did dry I was really happy. Thing to note, I did flip it over then and put some blood on the back of the banner, which you'll see shortly. Now it's getting it attached to the banner hanger that goes between the knight's legs. So I sliced very carefully off the plastic part of the banner you saw us moulding earlier, sprayed it black, sprayed it lead belcher so it fits in with the rest of the army, bit of super glue very carefully onto the end, and stuck it on. Now, point to note, before you start painting this, let the super glue thoroughly dry, or else potentially you're going to hit that area and wreck the brush. Now this is a real simple painting stage on this and reflects what I'll be doing on the actual model. Bit of Retributor armour to give some just interesting brass details, and then it's straight on to putting a Vallejo sepia wash across, and this is a wash I use on my Death Guard or my Knights. If you check out my playlists down below for my Death Guard army and my Nurgle Knights that I've done before, it's going to be exactly the same painting scheme as them, and this is just a great wash to really dirty it down. I'm not putting it on any part of the banner though, just as a point to add. And then when it's thoroughly dry, take some Nihilakh Oxide, which is a really great technical paint, just to do some aged oxidized effects, and you can sort of see there as I turned it over the blood on the back of the banner. So we're back again to the finished shot, really gross at the back, even more disgusting at the front as we go around and see what I think is going to be a really grimdark, exciting addition to my knight to go with the demonic shield I did last week. So if you enjoyed that, which I hope you did, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.